welcome, Warren. Thanks for joining me today.
My pleasure.
Love to chat a little bit further about you and what you do and how you do it and what you see as new trends happening as being a business coach, but also the ups and downs of entrepreneurs, of what you see on an ongoing basis. So I'd love to learn a little bit more.
So that's a lot. Where would you like to start?
Why don't you give us a little bit of background on yourself and then we'll go from there.
Sure. I have kind of a weird, eclectic background. I'm a recovering lawyer. So I practiced down on the Canadian equivalent of Wall Street called Bay Street for 6.5 years. Left that to become, I was a college professor. I've been a serial entrepreneur. I've been an actor and a theater director. And in my last entrepreneurial venture was way back in the late 90s, early 2000s, exited that and was looking for the next big thing to do. And a family friend was doing this weird thing called business coaching that I'd never heard of before, but sounded really intriguing. And I looked into it and went, oh my God. And then I checked on, I consulted with family and friends and things like that. And everybody was, oh my God, that's perfect for you. And so I jumped into it back in 2002 and haven't looked back. Wow.
That is an amazing transition. I mean, I guess you're finding it interesting and well-deserving to yourself in a sense of you're getting to help other people strive and meet goals and expectations like you do. I'm sure you set out for yourself as well.
Yeah, and I actually, a lot of it is almost like at a philosophical level. I actually believe one of the reasons I went through all these different incarnations is because I was always looking for the way to make an impact. It's weird to have a bio that starts way back at birth, but in my case, when I was born, I was supposed to die. I was the second person in history to live. The doctors had given me zero chance of survival. And so when I found that out, I was sort of on this quest to how do I do something with this gift I wasn't supposed to receive, right? So all those different incarnations were ways of I was searching for the thing, right? So law was maybe going to politics or pursue justice, acting and theater directing, the transformative power of art, being a college professor, molding young minds, all that kind of stuff. But it was really in entrepreneurship where it's saying to me, I actually believe that entrepreneurship is one of the most powerful forces for positive social change. And so to that extent, entrepreneurs need help. And just like what you do at SuiteWorks, right? Like you provide not just space, but you provide a lot of support for your members or tenants, and they need that support in all kinds of different ways. And the more that we can help entrepreneurs succeed, I think the more everyone succeeds, because entrepreneurship is about solving problems and about providing things that make people's lives better.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And solutions come in different forms. It's not just in one direction and one road. If you think you're going like this, you're not going to get the full value out of what you need. You need to kind of reach out to other expertise and education programs and people and facilities. Like you said, it's seeing that drive happen and facilitate change. And everybody needs a little bit of help.
Yeah. And in my what I find is a lot of entrepreneurs, they go into it for, you probably see this all the time, with the people at SuiteWorks, is that people start businesses usually either because they've got some personal passion or they have some technical expertise or they're forced into it by circumstances. But it's rare that somebody goes, I'm going to study business for 2 years, learn all the skills necessary to succeed, and then begin my business. Right?
Yes.
And so there's usually a big skills gap. And so that's where I kind of come in to help that if they want to hit those goals, and I want them to succeed because they make this better impact on the world, but they're not going to have that impact if they don't actually know how to grow their business. And so I kind of go in and help them do that without sending them off to a 2-year, educational program.
What do you see as the most common thought processes when it's a new entrepreneur coming through the door? They're gung-ho, they're ready to, set the world on fire. What are you, and I don't want to call them mistakes, but maybe misinterpretations of where they see the business starting with? Like, what is the transition, or what is the most common theme that you might see happen?
So it's a great question. So I'm going to frame this in a way that people may think I'm criticizing optimism, but I'm not. But like people think entrepreneurs are risk takers, and they're actually not. There's been a lot of studies about entrepreneurs, and they're actually not risk takers. What they are is they're optimists. And so one of the things that happens, I generally don't work with startups. And one of the reasons is startups have a hard time taking advice. Like they're so enamored with their idea and their business that they can't actually see or anticipate that it's going to be as hard as it will be. Like they're so in love with their idea that of course people are going to want it. Of course people are going to buy from you. This is just going to be wonderful, right? And so they don't actually take into consideration the risk that's inherent in their business or in the activity. And they're not aware of kind of the risks that they're going to bump up against. And so they're actually quite hard to coach at the early stages, because they're just so, and I love, like, the passion is fantastic. And it's a force of nature that actually helps them drive over a lot of the obstacles that they come up against. But if they were, just a little bit more conscious of some of the risks and of taking, some counsel from people who've been there before, they probably smooth out some of the rough spots along the way.
That's interesting. I mean, we see a lot of different type of entrepreneurs that come through our doors, whether they're seasoned startup or whether they're coming from a big corporate mindset as well through the doors. But it's interesting that the common, I feel like there's a common theme between them, but just in the small bits of just, not that they're invincible, but they're, they've got this, they're ready to go. And whether they've got the resources or the education or the thought process for it all, there seems to be a little thing that resonates that I've seen come through the doors. And whether that's right or wrong, it's an interesting dynamic that I noticed within entrepreneurs. So it's engaging, because every time you think you can put somebody in what you think is a perfect product for them or something like that, or you chat with them to try to connect them within our network to somebody else, they have this new idea, and it's amazing to see where it actually follows through on the road. So as a business coach, what would be the best 3 tips that you could give to somebody if they're not at the startup stage, but let's go with the middle of the game kind of idea in regards to whether it's partnerships, whether it's financial support, what it might be? Are there 3 common tips that you would give to somebody, or are they all unique?
So there's 3 common foundations, I'll call it that. Tips are different. Like, everybody, the tips are very, very different based on circumstances. Right. But there's 3 foundational pieces that I always want to see business owners have in place if they're going to, because everything else sort of sits on them, and they are foundations. So, and the metaphor I use is sort of a sports-based metaphor, that you can't win if you don't know how to keep score. You can't win if you don't have a winning team, and you can't win if you don't have a winning game plan. Okay. Right? And so those 3 things need to be in place. You need to know your numbers. That's the knowing how to keep score. So you have to know your financials. You have to know your KPIs. If you don't, you're sort of, swinging in the dark. I sort of jokingly, something, when you shoot pool, the balls go where you shoot them, not where you want to shoot them. Right. And so the numbers tell you where you shot the balls, not where you wanted to. They just show you where they went. Right. And so you can make better decisions based on the numbers. You can't, if you don't want to do everything yourself, you've got to have a team, and you've got to have a good team. Right. And so a winning team is quite different than just a competent team. And so you've got to do the work on building a high performance culture, which is different from a nice culture. A nice culture where everybody, we have nice foosball tables, and we have Friday lunches, and we bring in a massage therapist in, and that stuff is great. I'm not knocking it, but it's not the same as a high performance culture. A high performance culture, again, if you use either a sports team or even an arts thing, like when I was an actor, like, you don't want to be on stage with somebody who's going to forget their lines or, doesn't know how to engage with you. You don't want to be on a line on a hockey team with somebody who refuses to go in the corner. Like, high performers like to play with high performers. Right. So that's a culture where there's performance is expected, and there's sort of a reciprocation between you and the team. And then the third one is having a game plan. Like, if you don't have a game plan, then you can have a great culture of high performers. If they don't know what they're supposed to do, they're either going to get frustrated or they're going to make it up on their own, and it's going to go in lots of different directions.
Right.
right? And so you need to make sure that you're providing the game plan, or better yet, involving them in the crafting of the game plan. And when those three things are in place, then things kind of start cooking with gas. And I guess there's a fourth, you asked for a three, but here's 3.1, the bonus, is really working on yourself. I mean, I don't like the overused word mindset, because that gets kind of confused, but personal growth, like what you think, what you believe about yourself, how you encourage yourself to be your best, to kind of, bridge the gap between who you are and who you could be, is big. Like, Maslow once said that what one can be, one must be. Now, I vary that. I don't like must, because it creates obligation, which then creates guilt and stuff like that. But I say what one can be, one gets to be. But you need to put in the work in order to be that.
Absolutely. And I'm going to guess that's probably number one, really, to have the proper strength behind you to continue with your business as well. You've got to have that mindset to do that. And then everything kind of somewhat falls into place from there, if you prepared yourself with those other three that you've put through as well. So that's interesting. I'm loving this, and the more information that we can give to our audience, the better. And is there anything that you'd like to tell us about your business that you feel that might resonate even with one of our SuiteWorks team members, or whether it's a corporation, whether it's a middle-sized business, that makes it all just kind of come together full circle? Like, once you've done your homework, once you've worked on yourself and you've kind of moved along in business and you think you've got things going on, is there one last little tidbit, if you will, that just what you can't stop doing? I guess that was my long way of getting to the point of, once you're going, what are the things that you should continue on with, which I think is what you've just said there. But also, you get to a spot in the business and going, yep, I've made certain amount of money at this point in time, and my team is great. Now that they've lost momentum, what is it at that point in time that they could, strive again and see how to make new goals? Is there something that you could be taught from you, or from your, I'm going to say, program, if you will, to help everybody out?
So there's a couple of things in the question there. So one of the things is to execute the plan. So one of the problems that people have is they write plans, and then, every plan has to change when it bumps up against reality. Right. Mike Tyson once said, everyone's got a plan till they get punched in the face. And so you have to execute the plan, and there's methodologies for how you successfully execute. And when you execute well, you create accountability for your team, but you also create inspiration for the team. And this is the part that I think people miss all the time. They're always like, oh, accountability and holding, that's hard and stuff. But the reality is, when a team sees that at the beginning of every quarter, we set a 90-day plan, we execute on the 90-day plan, we succeed in what we achieved, what we set out to achieve, and we do it again, the team gets very inspired and motivated by that. They believe in the process then. And even if everything doesn't get successfully executed, you find out why, right? So a plan is a theory, right? It's a theory that says, if I do these actions, it's going to produce that outcome. That theory is either going to be correct or incorrect. And so the process of continually executing on your plan will refine your skills and will allow you to see what works and doesn't work. And then people will get inspired. So that's like the pragmatic answer to the question, what should you keep doing? Right. As the business grows, then what happens is, as you start to succeed, so there's people in my business kind of fall into two different categories in a way, in very simple terms. There's some coaches who do the forget constraints, dream big, the universe will come behind you, and all you have to do is set huge, BHAGs, big, hairy, audacious goals without any understanding of how to get there, and the universe will conspire to support you. I'm actually not one of those, for a couple of reasons. One is that, for every one of those story, the apocryphal story of the person who did that, there's 99 others that have crashed on the side of the road. And so there's a pragmatism that doesn't happen. Secondly, there's a thing for some people, there's some entrepreneurs that kind of big goal is super inspirational and it drives them. If that's the case, then ignore what I just said and do that. Go for that.
Right.
But for most people, what I find, they got a thing in their back of their head that if a goal is too big, a little part of their brain goes, oh, it's not going to happen. Right. And then they give up. So when you start and you set goals that are really, so one of the parts of my process is to do really detailed SWOT analysis. I've actually created a software tool that actually automates the whole front end of the strategic planning process. So it automatically helps you create a SWOT analysis. And when you do that, it helps you understand the constraints you're actually operating in. So you set realistic goals.
Okay.
And then when you say, and then what happens is as you start knocking off some goals, then the goals start to get bigger. Because you believe, right? There's something called a confidence competence loop. So as you become more confident in your ability to do things, you actually will get better at them. And then you can set bigger goals, right? So, and then within my process, what does that mean? So there's two things to that. So I actually have like a 3-month process that we put those 3 things in place. I've got software tools, around culture. I've got software tools around managing your financials and producing your KPIs. And then I got my planning software. So I actually have like a pretty detailed, structured process to make sure those 3 foundational pieces are in place. Because you're in Ontario, there's an interesting thing for people who have teams that are growing, that they're wanting to get involved in this process. There's something called the Canada-Ontario Jobs Grant. And so I do a training for the senior team to help them learn strategic planning. And the government pays 6/7, I believe it is, or either 5/6 or 6/7 of the cost of doing it. So you can actually learn this kind of really detailed strategic planning process and having your team learn it at a way that's like super crazy affordable. And it's a great program for the government because it's a jobs program. So the people who are participating in it learn skills that make the organization less dependent on you as the owner to do everything.
And that's interesting. If the team's engaged, it only betters the results. And like you said, and being the president or being the owner, whomever it might be, it needs to be a well-rounded scenario where that they aren't doing everything and depending upon, like you said, yourself to do it all. And they need to know, they need to be able to know that and I don't like the word delegation, but they need to know that they can delegate or have everybody included and make it an inclusive team. So then everybody then is getting value out of it and then can move forward with their goals too at that point.
Yeah, because then you create ownership. Like when everyone is involved in that, it's really, really hard for someone to argue against that they should have done something on the plan when they were the one who actually helped create the plan.
Interesting. You're right, though.
It is, yeah. And people get, and they get more motivated. And then when you teach it well, one of the great things, right, is when you have a team where they hold each other accountable, you as the boss don't have to. Like I've got clients when I'm in on their executive meetings, it's fascinating because the owner will sit back and then 2 or 3 of the, leaders in the organization start going, well, what about this? I thought we were going to do that. Well, how do we solve that? And all of a sudden they're engaged and the owner just sort of listens and, jumps in and helps make decisions. But it's really cool to see teams supportively holding each other accountable.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I think we're out of time right now, but I appreciate chatting with you. And,
you too.
And I'd love to bring you back on again in the next little bit and chat a little bit more and find out what's cooking in your brain.
Oh, that's a scary place.
But thank you very much.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it. Good luck to you.
Thank you. Have a great day.